Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Aaron Dykes. This is the INFOWARS Nightly News.
Tonight, reporter Patrick Henningsen unleashes bombshell quote from SPLC head Mark Potok, where he claims there is no hate speech. This from an organization that claims that those who don't bow down to the government are inciting hate. Plus, Mike Adams joins us in studio to talk about the gross injustice of Agenda 21 and its emerging effects on small-town America. Then, TSA whistleblower claims that agents fear radiation from naked body scanners. We'll also cover today's top headlines and more tonight on the INFOWARS Nightly News.
At the top of our news stack tonight, our reporter Patrick Henningsen has developed sources inside the Sanford Police Department, as well as other sources he has compiled to show Zimmerman will most likely not be arrested for first-degree murder. They are not planning to get together a grand jury, and he's also uncovered disinformation about supposed neo-Nazi groups patrolling around the Orlando, Sanford, Florida area, proving that that has all been a hoax, and yet the media ran with it. But breaking news he's brought to us earlier today on the show, he's going to elaborate on, is the conversation he had with Mark Potok of the SPLC, saying there is no hate speech, at least not when it comes to the new Black Panther group. Patrick, thanks for joining us.
Hi, good to be with you, Aaron.
And, of course, we see this Trayvon Martin case continuing to spiral into a national debate. Some have pointed out that they're trying to stir up a race war. At the very least, they're trying to punch our buttons and distract us in time for the elections, keep our mind off of the larger looting going on throughout this ongoing economic crisis.
Absolutely. That's exactly what's going on. But worse than that, Aaron, they're going to take us into a whirlpool of social division and apply something that appeals to the lowest common denominators on both the far right wing and also on the far left wing. And so it's bad enough that they're this is providing a distraction that's run for over a month. It's dominating every major media outlet. I'm talking about newspapers, television, national news, cable news. The Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman media circus has just taken over. And now they're using it, the opportunists on the left-leaning side, in terms of Al Sharpton and the Jeremiah Wrights and the Barack Obamas and the Rachel Maddows of the world, will take this and use it to further make a divide. It's an election year, Aaron. It's 2012, so cheap political points are looking to be scored. And then on the far right, you have the bankrupt, totally irrelevant neo-Nazi group. And also, I will put the new Black Panther Party on the far right, actually. They're totally irrelevant. Both of those groups probably have either CIA or FBI informants embedded at the highest level of the organization in order to steer their radical agendas.
Yeah, I want to make that clear out of the gates, because history shows, particularly these neo-Nazi groups, always are steered by these FBI informants, these provocateurs, get a couple of yokels in the group to make it look like something's happening. In fact, in the Orlando area back in 2006, there was a big splash over a neo-Nazi rally where they deliberately marched through the black community to try to stir up sentiments. And it turned out the leader of the group was this guy, David Gletty, an FBI agent, an informant, a provocateur, and yet many of these neo-Nazis continued to support him even when he was exposed. And I saw a similar thing actually at a rally in Austin. I saw footage of it from a few years ago where you had a handful of these neo-Nazis and thousands of people in the crowd shouting them down, really buying into the very division they're trying to sell us.
Sure, you have the same thing with the anarchist groups that they bus out to the G20 or to the G8 protests, and these are people who wear balaclavas over their face, and also some of them are police officers. You can see the police issue boots and also military issue boots and so forth. That's no surprise to anybody. But look, our good friend Bill Ayers, who is linked with organizations like the Ford Foundation. You know, the Ford Foundation was created to subvert labor unions, for one, all over the world. And also, they're very tight links with the CIA. So our good friend Bill Ayers, who has built up this beautiful reputation as a radical leftist, the people like Sean Hannity, who have no brain activity at all, or buying into the Bill Ayers radical left myth, when in fact Bill Ayers, most likely, I'll bet the car and the house, that Bill Ayers is a informant. He's an embedded individual, because if he wasn't, for the bombings and the horrible crimes that he's taken part in conspiring, he'd be doing back-to-back life sentences in a place like Terre Haute, Indiana Federal Penitentiary.
And of course, there's documentaries on the Weather Underground showing that numerous people inside that group were informants, others, I guess, useful idiots. But yeah, as you say, it's not that he's truly radical left or pushing the kind of class war or racial division that the Weather Underground pushed in those days. They're actually basically elitist. They're connected with Wall Street bankers and, yeah, part of this Ford Foundation system that Obama eventually grew out of. And you've got skull and bones people like McGeorge Bundy running the Ford Foundation programs where they deliberately chose to fund radical black groups and other minority groups instead of much more tame groups who maybe have actually been able to accomplish some good things.
Yeah, they're obsessed with controlling both sides of the conversation. They're obsessed with controlling both sides of the paradigm. It's a lot like, you know, when you go into a casino and you go to play at the blackjack table or whatever. That's us. We're the guys on the making the bets. They run both sides of the game. The casino and the house is the only person who ever makes a profit in that equation. And that's exactly what we have with what unfortunately we have in America is a total society that's run and directed by dozens, in fact, hundreds of foundations and NGOs. And this is now spread all over the world. And you'll see it in almost every country on the planet. It's being done a clandestine agenda of social engineering, which is being achieved quite efficiently, I might add, through the various foundations, through the Open Society Institute, through the Tides, through the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation here in America.
And we know how this mechanism works because we've studied history, but back to the Trayvon shooting case, why did this become such a media outburst? I mean, you had the Oscar Grant killing on the train system over there. There was outrage over that, but not anywhere near the same level. And we saw that cop serve, I think, 1 year at the most, maybe 2 years, and go off scot-free. The black community and the community at large forgot all about him, but they're up in arms over this Trayvon thing. We know it's been socially engineered, but let's get back into specifically why. What have you found, and what happened when you talked to Mark Potok?
Well, you know, the reason I got into this story at the beginning, Aaron, is because I'm on the mailing list. I get news alerts from the right-wing political side of the spectrum and also from the left wing. And I sign up to everybody's alerts because I want to see what's going on at all times. And I got this one news alert from a incredibly Democrat Party-oriented supposedly news website out of Los Angeles called LA Progressive. Okay, they're very nice people who run this site. They're very well-intentioned, very well-meaning. Anyway, Julie Driscoll, who is this fire-breathing liberal blogger and a gatekeeper of sorts, and I chronicled this in my article on INFOWARS.com today. She ran with the armed neo-Nazis patrolling the streets of Sanford. And I had a bit of an argument with the editor. I said, you know, you guys should be ashamed of yourself. You're helping to promote a race war. And this is one journalist talking to another, okay? We had this private conversation over the weekend. And he said, well, it's because of racial profiling. This is an opportunity to bring the issue of racial profiling to the fore. And I'm saying to myself, what racial profiling? You know, how can the media or the mob, the populist mob, decide what the elements are of any criminal case? This should be something for the police and for the courts. And then the liberal will come back to you and say, well, the police didn't do anything. The courts didn't do anything. It was only because of public outrage. Well, Aaron, what this is quite simply was an easy target because there was a young teenage boy, and they've got all his child pictures. They don't have any pictures of how old he was when he actually was shot. And that's another thing on its own, is the media presentation of this case. But it's an easy opportunity for the real detritus of the political world. I'm talking about people like Al Sharpton or some of these other liberal pundits or the Chris Matthews of the world in election year in order to score cheap points. And look what they've done. They're pushing America towards in the direction of a race war. And I think shame on anybody in the media who's contributing to that. There's old ladies getting tasered. INFOWARS.com has hundreds of examples over the last year of old ladies getting tasered, people getting beaten, pulled out of wheelchairs, abused by police. This is happening to all of us, Aaron, in America. It's not just black people. It's not just Hispanics. It's whites. It's everybody. This is our new police state.
That's true. It's coming home to roost. But specifically, they were caught pushing this fake neo-Nazi story, and the media ran with it. They not only played the race card, they stuffed the deck with so many race cards you can't look any other direction.
Sure. I phoned the Southern Poverty Law Center, and I spoke to Mark Potak, who's in charge there, and he is the Grand Master of the Southern Poverty Law Center. And I said to him, what's going on down there in Sanford? Are there neo-Nazis or not? I wanted to get confirmation from Mark because I had seen this on the Southern Poverty Law Center's website. And he told me, and quite rightly, I have to give him credit, he said, no, there's no reports of that. He was kind of muffled about that rebuttal there. That original story has since been retracted by the Miami New Times, by the way. And anybody can just call the police department in Sanford, Florida, and they'll tell you if there's been any reports, and there haven't. So, and I said to Mr. Potak, I said, hey, had a good conversation about legal aspects of what's going on and also about the history of neo-Nazis. And he filled me in on quite a few interesting characters and so forth that they keep track of. And I said, well, what about the new Black Panther movement? I said, they've gone on Miami radio. They're calling for blood in the streets. We're going to get sued, we're going to get booted, and we're going to see blood on the streets. They are calling for a race war, literally, and also have put a bounty on George Zimmerman's head. Okay, so I said, is this hate speech? Can we arrest these people? This is a bit dangerous. And Mark Potak's exact words to me were, there's no such thing as hate speech. And that was a quote that just blew me away, Aaron. I don't know what to say. He said that it would have to be an immediate threat. In other words, hate speech in their eyes, as he referred to my question, only applies to when you're standing across the road at like if I was a Black Panther across the road and there were Ku Klux Klan across the road and someone yelled some remark that incited violence.
And of course, you're discussing hate speech to point out the hypocrisy, because it's this issue they're trying to brew up to pass ridiculous laws to restrict the First Amendment. There's already laws on the books about making threats against someone's life, threatening violence, trying to carry it out. Here's one of the posters they brought up for the murder of Trayvon Martin, $10,000 reward, dead or alive. Isn't that what they said?
Yep, that's what they said. You know, I think it's pretty good indication, Aaron, here. Let's use our powers of deductive reasoning. If the Black Panther leader, Mr. Malik, whatever his last name is, if he's calling for this on radio, and this is on